Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education by Kate Colbert and Joe Salustio with contributions by Elvin Freites is now available for pre-order on Amazon. Get your Kindle edition or your softbound book. It's going to be
amazing.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. And I thought I'd start off this episode by talking about me.
Hold on, Joe. Excuse me.
Yes.
I think you've forgotten. Today is the EdUp TakeOver.
Oh, okay. So we're not talking about me then today.
We're not talking about you for once. We're going to focus on the rest of the world, Joe. And we're going to put you in the back seat while a colleague of mine, one of my favorites in higher ed, someone who inspires me every day, and I take over the mic and talk about whatever we want.
Wow.
On the show.
Wow. Well, there is no sound effect I have that is appropriate for this. So I think what I'm going to do, Dr. Michelle Cantu-Wilson, is leave you and the future Dr. Linda Battles to conversate about anything you want to conversate about. So I guess see you later.
Bye, Ethan. Bye. Yes. There's a good song. We could have played that, Linda.
Goodbye.
Bye, Joe. I'm so excited to do this.
I
feel
too.
So empowered. Don't you feel so empowered, Michelle?
I do. I don't know what to do with Joe's mic muted. I don't think I've ever experienced that before. And all the time I've been co-hosting. How about you?
Same here. And I do have to say, I will miss his sound effects.
I will too. I'm not gonna replace them. I'm not doing it. Linda, I'm so glad that we were able to do this. You and I found each other through this podcast.
That's right.
And when we did, it became very apparent that we had some similar backgrounds. And I thought we would just kind of chat about where you are right now in life, and then show the listeners what the future of Latino leadership in higher ed looks like. What do you think?
I love it. I'm so excited to do this with you, Michelle. And I'm so happy to finally get to meet you. I know we're not in person, but to see your face, and really excited to do this. So let's get started.
Let's do it. So tell us who you are and what you're doing. And you know what I want to focus on. So take us there.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I'm Linda Battles. I'm the Regional Vice President for the South Region at Western Governors University. I also serve as the Chancellor for WGU Texas. I am in my second year of the Executive EDD in Higher Education Leadership Program at the University of Texas at Austin. And I am, I guess, in a cohort of 14, and I am one of 2 Latinas in the cohort. And so really excited to be here. I never thought that I could be here. You know, it's that imposter syndrome where I just never thought I could get my terminal degree. And yet here I am. I've completed my first year, getting ready to complete my second year, and going to head into the next year with defending my proposal, which is focused on Hispanic adult learners in Texas and online competency-based education.
Congratulations on completing your first year. That is such a huge deal. But I want to go back to what you said that I think, resonates with a lot of people. You said you never imagined that you would get here. Why? Where did you come from that would make you believe that you weren't capable or able to reach this achievement that you've already reached?
Yeah, I think it's just that sense of insecurity of being underprepared academically, even though I have accomplished so much in my career. I am a 2-time graduate of UT Austin. I earned my psychology degree from there. I earned my public affairs master's degree. I did my master's degree while working full time, and I know how much it takes to do that. So I knew I was ready to put the work in, but I've doubted my abilities. And I think that just comes from my insecurities as a Latina, and some of the things that we hear throughout our lifetime, that we're not smart enough, we're not good enough.
Mhm.
And I think as you get older, though, that narrative changes
Yeah,
in your head, and
it
you
does.
start to realize, to see the things that you can accomplish,
Mhm.
regardless of where you come from. And I love when I joined WGU, one of the um, beliefs is in the inherent worth of every individual, the inherent worth and talent of every individual. And so I truly believe that, and I believe that in myself. And I've been able to overcome a lot of barriers through my journey, my academic journey,
Mhm.
in this doctoral program.
You talk about getting those degrees from UT. That's not an easy thing to do. So my immediate reaction was, "Pues Linda, ¿qué tienes? Why are you saying that?" But having completed a doctorate in my 40s, I can also understand that feeling of imagining that it's going to be so much harder and so less welcoming than it actually was. And then having watched you online and listened to your guest hosting, I would imagine that once you got into that system of the doctoral program, that you found that not only did you fit in just fine, but you actually changed the dynamic in the room because of your cultural strengths. Would you agree?
I agree 100%. And it's really empowered me to share my story with my cohort members, with my faculty
Mhm.
members, to really engage in that discussion. The program that I'm in has a diversity, equity, and inclusion foundation permeating through all of the courses, as well as social justice.
Wow.
And that is the thing that I love about it. And it has, in several of my classes, has forced me to really reflect
Mhm.
on my own upbringing as a Latina from El Paso, Texas, a
Woohoo.
border town,
Mhm.
and what brought me to Austin to get my bachelor's degree, and what kept me going.
Mhm.
And I think back about how important my mentors have been in my journey. My very first boss and mentor was State Representative Irma Rangel, Latina from Kingsville, Texas, who was the first Latina who was elected to the Texas House of Representatives in 1976.
Wow.
And she's just a wonderful role model for me. She passed away in 2003, but as I worked with her, I saw this strong Latina who, she was single, she didn't have children, and I think as a Latina, you grow up thinking that that's the future for you, is to get married and have a family, stay at home, help provide for the family, and that I sort of broke out of that. Uh, and moved to Austin, came to UT, got my degree, and then started working for IRMA. And I just saw a different world that was open to me. And from there, I went on to the coordinating board, the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, and my second boss and great mentor, Raymond Paredes, who is the first Latino to serve as the Commissioner of Higher Education in Texas. And he really mentored me and uh, helped to develop my competencies.
Mhm.
I served in several roles there at the agency over a 20-year span, and really helped me find my voice, is what I say. He just always, I've always been very quiet.
Mhm.
Uh, Before I got into working for the coordinating board with Raymond, but I always been the listener,
Mhm.
and then the person working behind the scenes. And he always encouraged me to speak up and share my thoughts, whether we were in executive meetings or with board members, and I slowly gained that confidence.
Mhm.
And he gave me the competence and then also the opportunity
Mhm.
to move up. So
Interesting. You know, I'm listening and it's funny because this just makes so much sense to me, the what I'm seeing in your career trajectory. So there is your reach, right? What you've accomplished, working for the co-board, that's amazing. The degrees that you've achieved, that's amazing. And now you're the chancellor for the online system of Texas for WGU, and you've accomplished these great things. You're in a EdUp program. It's all amazing. But then we talk about, in the same breath almost, having grown up with cultural expectations that we did not necessarily meet when we were expected to. You know, I was 29 when I got married. I was 31 when I had my first child. I'm from a border town as well. I'm from Brownsville.
yeah.
And so when I went home to Brownsville from Houston, where I was going to the University of Houston, you know, the questions, you know, are you ever going to get married? ¿Tienes novio? ¿Qué está pasando? Like, what is
Oh
wrong with
yeah.
you? ¿Qué tienes? Right. And there was nothing wrong with us. So it's these polar opposites, right? These expectations that were placed upon us, and not unlovingly. It's just part of, you know, who we were and where we came from. And then what we actually did. Is there a center in that? Is where do we exist now? Do you feel like you have balanced the expectations versus your trajectory and your own desires to achieve?
I do. I feel fulfilled. I will say there was a time where I had pressure about having children. I married at the age of 27. My husband and I will celebrate our 25th anniversary on November 8th.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Go together.
But we don't have children. And that was a decision that we made together. And I think when you have a spouse who agrees and feels like the same, you know, we're not ready for children, we're not ready to bring them into this world. You know, we have other things that we want to do. We're a wonderful aunt and uncle. But for me, I look back on my career, on my life, and I really don't have any regrets. I feel like I've made some pretty wise decisions with the help of my mentors and with the help and love of my family, my parents who still live in El Paso, still with us. And I talk to them almost every day, my father, and the family unit is really important. And for us as you know, anybody, but you know, as a Latina, I lean into my family
Right.
very much for that
I understand
support.
that. I understand that. I do. You know, when we make this decision to go to college, I don't know about you, or when we made the decision, I didn't consult with anyone. You know, I just sort of said to my grandmother who raised me, "Hi, Mom." I said, "I'm going to college." And she said, "Okay." And it's kind of always been that way in my family. I'm the oldest of 26 grandkids. And my mother was the oldest of 9 kids, and my grandmother was oldest, I think, of 5 or 6. And so there's just that inner strength of the Latina who just says, "This is what I'm going to do, whether you like it or not." And my grandmother understood it, and she liked it, she supported it. But that didn't mean that it didn't come without, you know, sacrifice and the distance that you experience when you have to leave home, you know, going away from El Paso. I went away from Brownsville. But I felt like my roots were so strong. I never wavered in my identity. You know, I knew what my goals were, and I knew I was going to achieve them. And I think that's because of that upbringing and those deep, deep roots. And I can see that you're the same way. You talked about mentors a couple of times. And so let's go into that. Where would you be without the support of the mentors? And what are like the top 2 or 3 things that they gave you that you feel that really impacted your success?
Well, I think it would have been a lot harder without my mentors, because I learned just so much from them and their experiences as a Latino and Latina growing up in the really tough times of overt discrimination.
Mhm.
And the fact that they shared their experiences with me, I think for what I would attribute to Irma is her teaching me how to, I always say this, have a thick skin,
Mhm.
because, she always said, you're always going to be questioned about your abilities because you're a Latina. You're always going to have to work harder than everybody else because you're a Latina.
Mhm.
And therefore, you need to be stronger than everybody else because of that. And so, um, she taught me, don't let that break you.
Right.
When you experience discrimination, whether it's racial discrimination, gender discrimination, age discrimination, because I started at the Capitol at a very young age. I was 24,
Mhm.
and I even remember walking into meetings on behalf of her and
Mhm.
just being the only Latina there, being the only one in my early 20s, and being dismissed.
Mhm.
Even though I was empowered and I had the authority of the representative
Mhm.
to make decisions or to ask questions, I was still many times dismissed. Um,
Mhm.
and so, she taught me, don't let that cripple you. Don't let that, you know, um, undermined your abilities, but turn it into something positive. And that's exactly what I've done. I've used that energy to then stick up for
Mhm.
DEI and social justice in the ways that I can, in the scope of my authority, and sometimes outside of my authority
Mhm.
in the positions that I've held in my career.
It's a
Um,
funny feeling. And I, it's, you don't know unless you experience it, but I think there are different on ramps to experiencing what we've been through when we get into a room and we are the only.
um,
It's enlightening for one, because it immediately makes you think, ¿Cómo pasó esto? Like, how did we get into a room where it's 2022 and, Latinos are a huge part of the population, and yet I'm the only administrator, or I'm the only leader,
mhm,
in this group of people, who represents, the growing population. It can, if you let it, I think, affect your confidence. Um, and I think it can also give you insight into, the institution or the organization and the values and the DEI work and the advance of equity. And so it's so much. And the reason I bring that up is because, the way that you said that Irma talked to you, she had to talk to you because you felt this weight of being that person, having those responsibilities, and then being dismissed. And that, in between those two spaces and after, is a lot of frustration, because I don't know about you, Irma, but I never doubted my abilities. Like, I know I can get the work done. Like, I know what I bring to the table. It's not about my confidence, but it's about access.
mhm,
Um, and it sounds like Irma was ensuring that you knew how to make your own access points, right?
mhm. Right.
Um, I'll tell you a funny story. When I was growing up, my best friend Marisa, her mom was a guidance counselor, Elsa Garcia. Hi, mom. Another one of my moms. I have many. And Elsa, she was determined to make Marisa and I fearless. And she, she would take us to the district office and she would introduce us to people. And she affirmed me all the time. She would say, "Hi, Michelle, she's fantastic. She's a good writer. She loves to speak. She loves to read."
Mhm.
She's not my mother, right? And my mother and my grandmother certainly affirmed me. But Elsa did it in a career setting around
Oh,
professionals. I'm 15, 16, 17, 18. And this woman over and over is saying, "Yeah, you can do it. You're amazing. go chica. And it was constant affirmation. She would introduce me to the superintendent, to other administrators, and that part of the networking, but also the confidence building, those affirmations, those are two things that I took with me. And so something that I do a lot is I affirm people. I'm always affirming people, because I think you never withhold a compliment, for one, right? Because it just indicates that you're not willing to, praise people when they deserve it. But also because I think all of us are walking around hoping that we're doing the right thing, and one of the things I learned from my mentors is you can be the person who assures people that they're doing the right thing, right? And so affirmations is one of the things that I took from a mentor, and I think that's the most powerful thing that's worked for me in my career in higher ed, because you don't get a lot of affirmations in higher ed. It's not, forgive us, academia, we love you, but I'm a transplant. I came from public ed, so give me a bulletin board, I'm all over it, right? I'll throw you a pizza party for your attendance, I'll do all kinds of things. But higher ed is a different animal, and that sense of familia, and that sense of cultura, and that sense of friendliness, and that sense of, you got it, and go girl, and you can do it, chica, that's not baked in.
Right.
And so I push to make that part of the culture, because I think it's needed for our students. And I think it's also needed to ensure that the DEI work that you're so passionate about is normal. It's just what we do,
I love that, Michelle. Thank you for sharing that story. That's wonderful. I applaud you for that, because yes, you're exactly right. We have to provide that culture. And the more that we can permeate that culture in higher ed, I think we will start to see more change. But change is just not a word that is very common to describe higher education.
No, it's not.
And we have to be the change agents to make that happen. And so this is what I love about EdUp, because constantly challenging higher ed leaders to think about, what does the future of higher education really look like? What do we need to change in order to expand access and success in higher education for everyone, and not just for a select few? And so this is why I'm such a big fan of EdUp from the beginning. I tell Joe, I told Joe this in my interview with him, that I loved the interview with Scott Pulsifer, president of WGU, who talked about how WGU is doing things differently to really expand access and success, so that specifically working adults are able to juggle their time at WGU with their work and their family responsibilities. But to me, that's what it's all about, is bringing equity to higher education, doing our part as Latina leaders to create that culture that's needed for being a catalyst to change, and being really able to expand opportunities and really do change lives for the better for everybody through higher education.
Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education, by Kate Colbert and Joe Salustio, with contributions by Elvin Freites, is now available for pre-order on Amazon. Get your Kindle edition or your softbound book. It's going to be
amazing.
I think it's definitely possible, but I'll go back to what you said about change. I know that we've turned the phrase into a verb. Like, we can't higher ed the whole thing. What does it mean to higher ed a project or a process? It means that we're going to make it slow. It means that we're going to install our own barriers. It means we're going to overthink it. And it can be very frustrating, I think, when you know that change is needed because you see the population of students and you're aware of their needs, but we are still stuck in the old process of believing that we have to follow the same processes and procedures that the people before us, followed in order to make a decision. And I think, one of the things that EdUp has done for me is just make me aware that there are people that are hacking the system left and right, to make credentials more possible and possible in a faster way for our students, which I think is wonderful because there are many different ways to get a credential. And I celebrate all of them. But, it seems like we still have to shake up that mentality of higher ed enacting its own, obstacles to get to innovation, because innovation in itself is disruptive. And so I think for leaders, the challenge is like, how disruptive can I be? And I think that's where being a loudmouth Latina has helped me in my career, because I'm the oldest, I'm the first grandchild, soy la consentida, I'm chiquita at home, and I've been encouraged to speak up and speak out. I wonder what higher ed is going to look like 25 years from now, when these young Latino students, and the population shift change who's in charge, right? I'm curious about that. And so with you in a position of leadership at such a high level, and doing sort of that disruptive work of figuring out new and different ways to provide access to students, what do you think the future experience for Latino students in particular looks like?
Well, I certainly hope that it is one that institutions are much more student-centric in how they deliver higher education, so that they're looking at serving the students and their needs first, and that they are meeting students where they're at. Because we have, for example, if you take Texas, I recently read last month in the Texas Tribune how the American Community Survey is showing that Hispanic Texans are making up 40.2% of the state's population.
Wow.
Compared to 39.4% of the state's non-Hispanic white Texans. So it's still unofficial, these estimates, but it's looking like Hispanics are the majority population in Texas. Yet, when you look at, for example, the median income household for white families in 2021, it was 81,384. For Hispanics, it was 54,857. And then the last statistics from this article was that only 18% of Hispanic adults graduated from college with a bachelor's degree or higher, compared to 42% of white adults. So that therein lies the problem. Right. And we are not reaching enough Hispanics. We are growing at an accelerated rate, and we're not keeping up with the educational attainment rates for Latinos so that they can prosper and thrive. And why? Why is that? It's because we're not meeting individuals where they're at, and we're not providing that flexibility that they need, the affordability, and the personalization of higher education. And I think that's key.
That's it right there. I love that you said that. I love that you brought the data. I think it's so important that we be data informed, and a shout out to Dr. William Serata from El Paso College, because he is the most data informed on the planet.
Oh, he's awesome.
I adore that brain.
Me too.
And you reminded me of him just now. But you said the personalization of higher ed, and I want to go there, because one of the things that I have always believed is that if you invite the family, you get the student. It is a family decision. It is a family experience. Just because me as the oldest, I didn't seek permission, didn't mean my family wasn't involved, in my college experience. We had an event the other night at San Jacinto College where our developmental education faculty and staff put on kind of an information fair for our developmental education students who are enrolled in DevEd and then our co-requisite math and English courses. And it was incredible. They had more people than they had anticipated coming. There were families that were coming together. They were getting to talk to the parents. And of course, my colleagues, I taught in that department, they were so pleased. They were not exactly surprised because they've known this as well. Regarding our student population, we're about, I think, 61 to 64% Latino students at our college. And so they were not surprised, but they were affirmed, I guess, that this is the right move and going in the right direction. And so when you say the personalization, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. And I hope everyone who has, large Latino populations listens to this and acts on it. It is indeed a family affair. And informing the family means that you are making it much more likely that the student is going to have that student experience that eliminates stopouts or dropouts, because it is a family endeavor and pride is involved. I'll give you an example of my husband, who is Latino. His last name is Wilson, but the Wilsons stopped being white after the Civil War when they moved to Texas, and married nothing but Latinas. He is full-blooded Latino, and he went back to school during the pandemic to get his bachelor's degree, fully online. And then as soon as he finished that, he went and got his MBA fully online and just completed that. It was a family affair. I was involved in every decision. I supported him in every class. I reviewed his essays. I affirmed him. I celebrated. The kids celebrated, our 3 kids. I made sure his parents knew what was going on. I texted his siblings to tell them when he did something good. He's 46 years old, and it's still a family affair. And so I think, again, you're hitting the nail on the head. Personalize that college experience and recognize that if you want to get the student, you have to invite the family, or you should, or you could. This may not be for every single, Latino student out there, but it certainly worked for our students at our college, and it worked for me in my own household. I'm very proud of my husband's accomplishments. It wasn't easy. And I think it was easier because he had me and the support of the family behind him.
You're so right. And I think, the family affair piece is so critical, especially for those students who are enrolling in higher education directly from high school. One of the things that my former boss, Raymond Paredes, used to say is, it's a myth to believe that our 18-year-old high school graduates are going to turn into adults overnight by the time they enroll in college that fall. So you still have to provide that support. It's not a sink or swim situation when they get to college. And I think that a lot of our colleges and universities are stepping up to provide that support. They're starting to see, how important it is to bring the family in early on, especially for first generation students. I was a first generation student. My sister is 2 years older than me, and she came to UT before I did. But she was able to navigate a lot of that for me that she did on her own, really, because my parents, neither one of them, went to college, and so they didn't know how to navigate it. So, but she really helped me through that process. And had it not been for her having gone through it, I think it would have been even more challenging for me. But think about all those Latino students, all those first generation students, regardless of their backgrounds, especially low income, students, how difficult it is to navigate. And bringing in the family can help provide that support when they are, off campus, or they're, working you know, on their degrees, and the families constantly checking in on them and saying, how are you doing, and that sort of thing.
I agree. And I love that you brought up the idea of, a poverty issue, because one of the things that we always worry about, the semester is about to start and we're worried about fall enrollment and we want to make sure we're going to hit our numbers. And I've said before, people are going to register on payday. They're going to register on payday. And if payday is the Friday before classes start on Monday or Tuesday, that's payday. And that's when they will register, because that is what living in poverty is like, or that's what living on a limited income is like, is you are going to do it as soon as you possibly can, as soon as you have the money. There was never a time when I was growing up in poverty that there was money to pay for something in advance. You paid when it was due, because I grew up very, very poor in Brownsville. And my grandmother, she was a teacher's aide, and, she was widowed in her 40s, left with 9 kids plus me. 6 kids were still in the home, and myself. That was a big responsibility on her. And so there were some really tough times. And I've always tried to remember that in higher ed, because when I was a faculty member, I would look at my students and see, my life playing out again in front of me with the decisions that they had to make. Do I take another class or do I take another shift? Right. And
That's
so that experience of having to manage your funds so closely, that I think a lot more people understand now since the pandemic, that is actually a skill. That's a skill set. And I've always appreciated that our students bring such resilience to the table. And I hope that we recognize that that's actually a skill. You learn how to, live life on a limited budget, and you're creative about the way that you do things. And you find ways to still have birthday parties for your kids, even when you're on a limited income. You find ways to still, have, family barbecues so that you can enjoy the best of what life is. You find ways to still take classes. And I think there are a bunch of students who deserve the affirmation, first generation students in particular, of being able to bring that skill set of resilience and creativity that comes from growing up poor. I'm not going to say that it was a gift in my life, but I am going to say that growing up poor has taught me a lot more about myself and ways to get what I want than privilege would have taught me. And, when we talk about these students, first generation students, Latino students, and we talk about these ideas that we have that we can implement in higher ed, I want to say to everyone out there, these work for everyone. If you affirm a student for the skill set and the individualization that they bring to higher ed, that works for all students. If you invite families to the campus, that works for all students. This is not just central to one particular ethnic group. The things that you do for the students who need the most support sometimes will always work for all students. We lift everyone, with these efforts. So
that's great. Well, one thing I do want to add to what you just said, for low income students in particular, and I'll quote my current boss, who's also a Latino leader at WGU. His name is Gene Hayes. He's our senior vice president for regional operations, and he says that decisions always result in trade-offs. And so when our students make the decision to enroll, the trade-off is what? They're going to spend their money on higher education as opposed to something else, right? And what will contribute to that decision? It's the return on investment. And they need to know that every dime, every hour that they spend, working on their degree is going to have a good return on investment. And when it's hard to show students what that ROI is, I think that's where we lose a lot of students, particularly low income people of color, when they don't see what's the reward on the other side. Is it going to lead to a good paying job? Am I getting a credential of value? Is it going to help me, upskill in my current job and get promoted? how much am I putting into this? How much is it costing me? And then ultimately, how much am I going to get back in return? And so that's why affordability in higher education is so important. And so I think that's the number one reason why we don't see more Latinos in higher education, because they're working to pay for their families. And they don't have the time to sit in a classroom, a traditional classroom, or to break away, from their day jobs. So that's why I think higher education has to provide that flexibility to meet them where they're at.
Yeah, I think about that, during the pandemic, where we all realized what the most important things in life actually are, right? We all had the same experience, whether we're, administrators in higher ed, or people in industry, or students, or 16-year-olds. We were all centered and we were all leveled by this pandemic. And so I think where we are is it is much more important, like you're saying, to students, that they have that balance. I think it's important to you and I as professionals. Joe, we just talked to Joe before he, got kicked to the back seat, about the being able to spend time with our kids. Like, we have all been recentered. And so if we look at our students the same way that we look at each other as professionals, and we have that sense of respect for their time and for their values and for the other things that they want to do in life and that they should get to do in life, then I think we can think of creative ways, to help them stay enrolled, and persist to get that degree. It's not easy. It's always going to be a sacrifice, but how can you be inventive in the way that you deliver a program, and ensure that a student is still getting that quality education, that high quality education, but not having to turn and disrupt their lives and turn over their lives and disrupt them, to get that degree? Because then was it a positive experience that they're looking back on, or is it a negative experience? Yeah, I got that degree, but I hated every minute of it. And they made it as hard as humanly possible, and my professors didn't support me, and it was hard to get registered, and I didn't know what book to get. Like, we really have to put ourselves in their shoes. That's why you and your doc program, did you feel that pain again?
Oh yeah. Lots of pain. Well, we started our doctoral program online on Zoom, because we started in 2021.
Did you like that?
I loved it.
You did?
I can't say that the rest of my cohort did. I think it was a mix of, I love to be in person as well, but it's just much more convenient to be able to turn on your computer and meet, rather than sit in 30 minutes, 45 minutes in traffic to get there, find a parking, walk to your class. And it takes up so much time as a working, as I'm working on juggling school and work. It's just, I don't have that extra time to commute. But I can say that I do enjoy seeing my cohort members in person. It's created a certain bonding experience that, even though we did bond virtually, it's helped that. But yeah, so
there are levels, I think, to the first gen experience, and there are a couple that we rarely talk about. And one of them is being first gen and getting a doctorate. And then the other one is being a first gen professional, the first in your family to reach that level of, job, that administrator role, the way that you have. And I think that's a conversation that we could probably bring up for another day. But what advice would you give to someone like you, who is already in leadership, who already has, a full life experience in higher ed, but they know that they want to go back and get that doctorate? What advice would you give them? And in particular, someone like you, a Latina.
I would say do it. It's never a good time to go back to school and get your doctorate, but it's always the right time, because it's so important, I think, for me, to show demonstrate to myself that I can do it, but it opens up such a whole new world of the academy that I've only sort of been on the periphery. I mean, I've been involved in higher ed and higher ed policy, but not to this extent that I've been able to experience through my doctorate program.
Mhm.
And I, getting that formal education,
Mhm.
I think has given me that self-confidence that, hey, I don't have FOMO anymore, because before it was like, all these people have doctorates and I only have a master's, and
Masters
but
is a big deal. But
well,
look at what we do to ourselves,
yes, exactly. And so for me, it's fulfilling a goal for me. I'm a lifelong learner by nature, and I love learning new things. So I would encourage them. Plus, not that it's an issue at my university where I'm at, but there are barriers to moving up in a university or a college without having that terminal degree.
Mhm.
So you may have all the experience, of your lifetime, but because you don't have the terminal degree, you're not going to get the job or the promotion. And
That's the
so,
reality. Mhm.
mhm,
That's the reality.
yep,
Yeah.
it is in the academy. So we, they're obviously, having the competencies is really, really important.
Mhm.
But this is why another reason why I decided to get my doctoral is I don't want to give anybody an excuse not to promote me, not
Right.
to give me because I do have the competencies, I do have the skills, but I know I'm learning something new every day. I don't know everything. And
Mhm.
so I'm like a sponge, learning every day. So
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go street druka on you. And if somebody doesn't want to promote you, you just tell them to call me, and yo te tiro esquina. And the real ones will know what that means. So we're coming up on time, I think. You and I could talk for a while. And so we're going to let Joe invite us back again to do a mic takeover. But let's end as we should, in Joe's typical way. Is there anything that you or I would like to share about ourselves that we haven't discussed? And what's the future of higher ed?
Oh, well, I'll yield to you to go first.
What have we not discussed? Well, I think the idea of, the first, Daniel, my colleague and I, Dr. Daniel Villanueva from the University of Houston downtown, we have our little podcast on YouTube, and we talk about being first generation professionals. And I think that I would like to see that discussed even more, so being a first gen student who then turns into a first gen, let's say white collar professional, that comes with its own set of challenges. It's not just the academy. It's a whole other world of experiences that we necessarily didn't have, especially if we grew up in poverty, right? And so I think I would like to see more exploration on that as a topic. And then for the future of higher ed, it looks, in my opinion, it looks faster. It just looks faster. It doesn't look so burdensome. It doesn't look so bogged down in processes and procedures. It looks innovative and accessible and familiar and familial. And I think that's because the pandemic might have taught us that we can be our authentic selves. We can be at home, like I am right now, on a remote day, and still be plugged in and still be a professional and not sacrifice any of, our experiences or our knowledge just because of the environment in which we're engaging. So that's what I have. I think higher ed looks faster, and I like that because
I agree. I like that.
we deserve that.
Yeah.
How about you?
Love it. Well, I would say I want to have a call to action. I want to call to action to all of those Latina and Latino leaders out there in higher education to serve as a mentor,
Beautiful.
to encourage other Latinos and Latinas to get their doctorate, and to serve in leadership positions where they are supporting and promoting DE&I and
Mhm.
social justice. So that's my call to action. The future
Love
of
it.
higher education, I agree, is accelerated, it's
Mhm.
flexible, it's affordable, and it's personalized. And it's basically student-centered. And I think with that kind of model, you can scale
Mhm.
access and success to levels that we've never had before.
Mhm.
So long as people have options,
Mhm.
there will always be those who want a traditional college experience,
Right.
and that's great. But we also need to provide options for those who cannot benefit from a traditional college experience.
I love that you
So
say it that way. Mhm.
that's it.
Yeah. I was clapping. We're on camera over here, y'all. We are looking right at each other. And so when she gave that tagline of, being accelerated and personalized, I was clapping on camera because I just love what you said. And I think Joe's going to have to come back in a second and give you props as well. Are you still there, Joe? Look at him.
Oh, you're on mute, Joe.
He's in the back seat.
No, I am not here.
Hey,
He fell
Joe.
asleep.
He fell asleep. Hey, he could not possibly fall asleep. You're entirely
No way. I heard every word.
Oh, good.
Hey, Joe.
Are you guys letting me back on my own show, or?
We're letting you back. Come on into the front
You're
seat.
empowered.
Come on over. Hop over.
Well, I just want to say thank you to you guys for creating an amazing episode. Not thank you for kicking me off, but I will accept it for the amount of incredible content that you created. What an ode to future Latina leaders here. I love the challenge you put forth, Linda. I love the conversation around family and decision making. And this is just, it's an honor to have the two of you take over, even though I was resenting it just a tad that I couldn't jump in. There were a couple of times I was like, should I come off mute? Should I jump in? No. You guys did great.
Thank you.
We enjoyed it. Linda, you're my, you're my hermana en la cultura. You're also someone that I look up to because of your successes. And I can't wait to meet you in person one day. If you're not already a part of TACHE, you need to register for the state conference that's going to be in Houston so that I can see you in person and introduce you to the familia. And say hello to your El Paso family for me, please.
Well, thank you, Michelle. And same here. I love the work that you're doing and how you do it and creating that culture that we talked about. Thank you for your leadership and really appreciate it. I'm going to try to make it.
Let's do it.
All right.
All right.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is how you add up. Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education, by Kate Colbert and Joe Salustio, with contributions by Elvin Freites, is now available for pre-order on Amazon. Get your Kindle edition or your softbound book. It's going to be
amazing.